Hi, my name is Samurux, and this is my Runick White Forest list. I think this deck is actually very capable of hanging with the top meta decks this format, and although this deck does somewhat struggle with Fiendsmith, a lot of decks do, and because of the Runick cards, I think this deck is actually more capable than most of dealing with them, since cards like Runick Fountain can naturally draw you into more disruption to stop the follow-up engine, and Runick's natural propensity of breaking boards means that no matter if you're going first or second, you're always going to have something to do. Without further ado, let's get into the deck profile. First up, 3 each of the Cutie Patuis, Esteller, and Elzette. I've seen some lists cut Elzette down to 2. I don't personally agree with this though. Because they're your starters, you want to see them in opening hand. And although Elzette is technically searchable, there are other things you would rather search. And also, because Elzette is an extra body on board for synchro plays, she sometimes becomes better to open than Esteller. Although Esteller is your main playmaker because she can get you to your tuners, which is invaluable, and she is the thing you'll be searching the most off of Elzette. Speaking of the tuners, next up, 1 copy of Rusia and 3 copies of Sylvie. Rusia is an extender, and she doesn't want to be normal summoned, so that's why I only play 1 copy of her. You don't really want to open her. However, Sylvie is a 2-card starter because if you don't manage to open the 2s, she plus a Runick spell means that you can go into Recelia and thus full combo. Although it's not really ideal to open just her and without any of the 2s, it is still like better than nothing. Next up, the Toy Box cards. 1 tank and 2 soldier. I play 2 soldier because although you don't really want to open any of them, if you open soldier, you can at least pitch it for the white forest, then summon it, get the toy box, and then set the other 2. It's not ideal, but it isn't the end of the world. Finally, for monsters, 2 copies of Effect Veiler. It's not a spell, so you can't pitch it for the white forest, which is why I'm only playing at 2, but it is a hand trap, which is sometimes valuable. So yeah. It is also searchable off of Recelia, so there's that. It is one of the things you are going to search, but it's also like one of the last things you're going to search because there are better targets to search rather than it. However, if you are going first, then yeah, you should definitely get this. Honestly, Recelia's search is really only worth going first though, so yeah. Like, it does work, but like, the things you want to search are usually part of your end board and not part of like the board breakers. Now let's move on to the traps. We have 1 copy of Woes. It's a searchable end board piece, and because it's pitchable and resettable by the White Forest or, you know, Hugin and whatnot, it is not a death sentence to open, but it's not amazing either. And that's it for the traps. Let's move on to the spells. First up, 3 copies of Tails. It is a decent card to open due to just being a searcher, but because it requires you to have its specific types on board already, it's not exactly amazing. However, it is resettable off of like Hugin and whatnot, so like, yeah, you do still kind of want to see it. It does also help you play through hand traps, which is amazing, but it's not like amazing without the specific types it needs to search. Now we get into the Runick part of the deck. First off, the 1-ofs. Golden Droplet, Smiting Storm, and Dispelling. You play these just as extra Runick names, so you can just summon Hugin or, you know, Jerry, but you don't really use them for anything else. Dispelling sometimes you'll use, but like, most of the time it's just to summon from the extra deck. Now for the 2-ofs. Destruction and Slumber. These are great board breakers and sometimes interruptions against certain decks like Tenpai, but they aren't as universal as the 3-ofs, so that's why I'm only on 1 each. Or 2 each, I mean. Finally, the 3-ofs. Flashing Fire, Freezing Curses, and Tip. Freezing Curses and Flashing Fire are universally just good. If you're going against any deck, they'll at least come up, and Tip just searches you any part of the Runick core, so that's why you're playing 3 of them. They're just universally good, and the others aren't as much, so that's why they're only at like 2 or 1-ofs. The reason I maxed out on Runick names is because the Runick fusions are not only Fountain Searchers and Recursors respectively, they're also Synchro Enablers, due to being 2s for Reselia or Diabel, and a 4 for Chaos Angel. I obviously play the max amount of Runick Fountains allowed, because this card is amazing, extremely searchable, and can draw you into more interruptions or extenders. Finally, I play 3 Toy Box. This is the ideal card to open for the Toy Box engine. It gets you additional extenders for the White Forest cards, allowing them to play through more hand traps. And it's just like really good, but although other than the placing effect, they don't really do much. They are kind of just extra spells. Because even in the fringe scenarios where your Snake Eye opponent places your monsters in Spell Trap, you can use the White Forest to just send them, so it doesn't really matter that much, but they are still really nice to have. Now for the extra deck. First off, the White Forest Synchros. Reselia, Silvera, and Diabel. You only need to play one of each because Reselia and Silvera are being put back into the extra deck via the White Force tuners, and Diabel as well if she hits the graveyard, although you do want her on board as well. Yeah, they have insane recursions, so that's why you don't really need to play more than one of them. Next up, 3 copies of Hugin. I played 3 because when you're going through your synchro combos, you can frequently find yourself using up the 2 Hugin other combo Runick players play, and you often want the extra one for protection. And Hugin will also come up a lot against the new TCG exclusive archetype Mimikghoul, due to being able to protect your cards from your opponent flipping up Dragon. Next up, 1 copy of Jerry. Jerry is actually very interesting, as not only is he recursion, he's also a Dark 4. This can come up in multiple scenarios, but what I want to highlight is when your opponent flips up, there can be only one. Because Reselia and Silvera are spellcasters like Estella and Rosette, you can't exactly make them on their Tikaboo. However, because the toy monsters are 4s with different types, the Beast Jerry, Spellcaster 2, and Toy 4, you can tune them together to make Chaos Angel and banish the Floodgate. Though this does require multiple cards and isn't exactly consistent, it is still better than nothing. Next up, the Synchro Tuners, Zapper Shrimp, and Christian Quandax. Zapper Shrimp is an easily accessible spell trap removal for stuff like Tenpai and Yubel, which is very nice, and can turn into Chaos Angel or Cheng-Ying very easily. This is essentially Power Crept Formula Synchron. Quandax is a tuner 4, which will become very obvious as to why that's important later. Next up, Hot Red Dragon Archfiend. Realistically, this can be any Dark 8 for Chaos Angel, and Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend is actually more optimal to play in this slot, but I just own Hot Red and I don't own Scarlet, which is why I'm playing him. It's best to have a Proactivate rather than a Reactivate in this slot. Since you're usually going to tune it off anyways, it's better to just use its effect if it comes up, rather than just wait for your opponent. Finally, the big bosses of the deck. Chaos Angel, Cheng-Ying, Luluwa Lilith, and Bestial Despotter. Now, obviously, these cards are extremely powerful, Synchro 10s, and they're, well, Lulu's a 12, but Synchro 10s are almost the heart and soul of this strategy. Cards like Chaos Angel need no introduction, Cheng-Ying synergizes very well with the Runick cards, and Lulu is a 12, which we'll see come up very soon. Now, you might be confused as to why Dissipator, considering we have no way to make him since he needs a Dragon non-tuner. Well, you see, the final card of my extra deck is this very, very spicy card. Gaia Armor Dragon Shell. This card is not only a Dragon 6 for Dissipator that can easily be accessible through combo, it also has the effect to equip itself to a Synchro monster, and when that monster battles, draw 1 card. This effect does matter, but not for the draw effect. That effect will not come up as often as you think, although it, I guess, sometimes will come up if they go straight to battle. But what matters more is that it equips itself. This means that it is a spell for Diabel to pitch, so you don't have to ditch another Runick, for example. finally, we have the side deck. First off, these War Criminals. I think that going first is not always a guaranteed thing, and these cards are dead going second. You can main Crimson Dragon since it does have applications without King Calamity due to making Dissipator, but I found the extra deck somewhat tight, so I elected not to. And because King Calamity is a 12, this is also why we're playing Lulu Lilith. Next up, Ash Blossom and Ghost Ogre. Because of the Runics, you don't exactly need to main deck them. However, siding them against specific matchups like Branded, Gimmick Puppet, or Yubel is extremely valuable, which is why we're siding them. Now, we have Crossout. There is specifically one card this deck struggles against, and it's this guy, Dimensional Shifter. However, you can also play these three as well. Droll and Lockbird, Nibiru the Primal Being, and Dimensional Barrier. Usually, your game plan for if you ever hit by any of these three is to just fall back on your Runic cards. However, with D-Shifter, you can't exactly do that as easily, and thus you kind of cry. Crossout's just a spell you can pitch if you draw multiple as well, which is nice. And finally, Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood. She is my time card of choice for several reasons. Because you can draw multiple times per turn due to the White Forest cycling fountain, you have a high chance to simply just draw her. And the fact that she works going second, as well as the tightness of the extract, meaning Mutant is hard to fit in, especially with this awkward level, means that it's just more preferred to play Ghost Sister. However, this is simply because I'm playing in person and time rules will be in effect. If you're not playing in person, I would suggest playing the three here that were suggested. Dimensional Barrier, Nibiru the Primal Being, and Droll and Lockbird. And that's my list. I hope people recognize the power of this deck and enjoy playing it as much as I do. Obviously, do what you can to spread through the algorithm, and I'll see you another time.